Howdy and welcome back to Not My Workshop. We are here at Glenn Gilmore's shop in Hamilton, Montana. Glenn, how you doing?
Good, Will. Nice to have you here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Glenn is one of the first blacksmiths, maybe the first blacksmith I met in Montana, back when I moved here 7 years ago. And on that first visit, I knew I had to come back because I didn't have a whole lot of time, but I saw that he had a very interesting shop. And I think we probably, at that point, talked a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today, which is Damascus gun barrels. The reason why we're doing this video is because a couple weeks ago, I was at the Bozeman Gun Show, and I found this shotgun right here. Now, pretty normal looking, old double-barreled black powder shotgun, but what's different about it is that it has very unique Damascus gun barrel. Well, unique for America. Pretty standard or common pattern, I guess, from back in the day from Belgium. Glenn, how long ago was it? What you went over there in
1985?
1985.
Yeah, a while.
Yeah, a long time ago. Glenn went over there and on his travels got to learn about this sort of thing, and it's always piqued my interest because if you guys know anything about Damascus, you know that welding something like this over that stretch is dang near impossible. And so this is an incredible feat of blacksmithing and pattern welding. Let's just dig right on in. Now, as we all know, it's summertime here in Montana, and that means that it is stupid hot outside, which means that if you don't have climate control, air conditioning, in the shop, it's stupid hot inside the shop as well, which is why we're very, very, very thankful that today's sponsor is Mr. Cool. Mr. Cool is a family-owned AC company, and they sent us a wonderful, do-it-yourself, easy install, mini split system to install in the shop, and I gotta say, it was super simple. It took Isaiah and I, like 3 hours to install it, something like that, which is just wonderful. If you can hang up a TV in your house, chances are you can install this mini split system. It's very, very, very cool. It comes with pre-charge, quick connect fittings, which means that you don't need to have an HVAC professional come out and charge you lots and lots and lots of money to install an AC system. Instead, you can do it all yourself, you and a buddy, or you probably need somebody else. It's kind of hard to just do it by yourself. If you're really strong, you could probably do it by yourself. It is absolutely incredible to have an AC system in the shop. It sounds kind of productive to have a forge going and AC at the same time, but it works out. Otherwise, it's just hot. But it's not just an AC system, it's also a heat pump. So in the wintertime, when it's super cold out, it can also keep you nice and toasty and comfortable in the shop. I find that I myself am way, way, way more productive when I'm in a comfortable working environment. And so having a system that was easy to set up to make that possible year-round is delightful. Now, they have a bunch of different models as well. They've got a 12K, 18K, 24K that are all Energy Star certified, and they've got a 7-year compressor and 5-year parts warranty that comes with it that you can upgrade to a limited lifetime warranty for the compressor if you so choose. So you're not high and dry just from not having a HVAC professional install it. They back it up as well. So if you guys are interested in staying comfortable, I very highly recommend that you go and get yourself a system today. Thank you, Mr. Cool, for sponsoring today's episode. With that, let's get back to it. So Glenn, tell us about a little bit why you were over there, where you were at, and kind of how you learned about this stuff.
Well, I got interested in Damascus in 1981. I got a creative artist grant to do pattern development, and this was in early days of Damascus in the U.S. We were working with just using hand hammers and coal forges. And then I had an opportunity in 1985 to go to Aachen, Germany and work and study with Manfred Burdal at Vulcanschmidt Aachen and International Teaching Center for Metal Design. Aachen's on the west side of Germany, just a couple kilometers from Belgium. And in Liège, Belgium, peak of the Damascus gun barrels in Belgium were made in that area. And so it was less than an hour's train ride from Aachen. So I started going over there to the museums and researching the Damascus gun barrel manufacturing that they had.
So do you have an idea about kind of when they started doing this type of pattern welding over there?
Oh, you know, it's been a while since I looked at my notes, but it was in the late 1880s, I would say. And peaking in the early 1900s, they made barrels and shipped them to rifle manufacturers all over the world. When World War I happened and the black powder went into smokeless powder, the demand for the barrels dropped, and the World War I caused a need for materials to make war weapons, and they scrapped a lot of the machinery that they were using for for making the barrels, rolling mills and forging hammers, and they just moved it all over or scrapped it and melted it down and made arms with it for the war. After World War I, one person in the Liège era wanted to bring back the production of the Damascus barrels. And so the material that I looked at was from 1925. This man and his son had started making barrels again, but there wasn't the demand to pay for the production, and eventually they went out of business. But they did set back up, had some of the machinery that they had used, they accumulated and started forging big billets, running them through rolling mills.
That's really interesting because Damascus gun barrels have been around for as long as guns have been around. But this particular style with these kind of mosaic twists did not happen for a super long time, I think.
Correct.
And it seems like when it was happening in Belgium, they were doing a very unique style and obviously doing it very clean as well. It's so interesting that they developed such unique patterns in such a short period of time. Do you know kind of where they brought it in from? Was there people still doing Damascus barrels in Europe when they started doing it that late?
Before then, you know, those guys had an imagination.
Yeah.
And they just worked. They started with patterns that they were doing and just went further. They even had some that had, one barrel said Liège 1903 or 1905. Another one had Prince Albert written in it, so as it coiled around, you would
like
read.
the pipe tobacco?
Well, I don't think it was a pipe tobacco. Yes, like the pipe tobacco, but I think it might have been a Prince Albert from somewhere over there.
That would make sense.
More than the pipe tobacco.
Yeah. And so the way that they were achieving these patterns, normally when we think of Damascus now, we think of like stacks of flat steel that we stack up and then forge down. But you can't do this pattern by doing that, right?
Correct. This is more of the mosaic Damascus they were doing.
And they were using, I think you told me years ago, like strips of wire, square wire to do these layups. Is that correct?
When you say wire, I think of something fairly thin, but they were
like
starting with
1/4 inch thick square stock.
1/4 inch, 5/16, maybe some even 3/8. But their billets were starting out 4 inches by 4 inches.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe bigger than that,
Yeah.
because what they were doing was using industrial furnaces to forge weld those billets,
Yeah.
and then putting them through rolling mills.
And so they can keep really low pattern distortion as they draw it down.
Distortion's minimized,
Yeah.
and you're compressing what started out as a fairly large pattern, bringing it down, and they would bring it down to about 5/16 square.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Before they would twist it?
Before they twisted it. Then they would twist those,
Yeah.
and then lay them side by side, 3 together, and forge weld 3 of them together and create a band 5/16 by a little over an inch or so.
I want to quickly talk for a second about the types of layups that we're talking about here, because while I can picture it in my head, that might not be the case for everybody. Normally, when we nowadays do Damascus, we start off with our flat bars of 1080 and 15N20. That's the most common steel that we use, and it's usually 1.5 inches wide, 6 inches long, 1/8 inch thick, or somewhere thereabouts. So when we stack it up, we get ourselves a nice tall stack of our layers like this. And from there, we manipulate it and we squish it down and restack it, or turn it into C's or S's and build out our mosaic patterns like that, like we've done on the channel dozens and dozens of times. And they did do this type of pattern welding back in the day, but the layups that we're talking about with the wires is something kind of different, because they're starting off with a very different starting stock. Rather than starting off with one piece of steel like this, they started off with little squares, which is awfully cool because if you think about it like the original Mario, old 8-bit video games, they were able to draw very cool pictures by using different size little squares and grids, something like this, where they have different sizes of the brighter steel, different sizes of their darker steel, and by using that, they're able to draw pictures, they're able to write words, they're able to do all kinds of interesting things. And what they figured out, when you take these flat layers and you twist them, it looks very different than if you twist something like a spirograph pattern, which is basically a grid pattern, but if you do something that is a composite twist, meaning that there is two different types of patterns, it interacts in a very interesting way where in the corners of the star shapes, you get a different pattern than what's in the core of the material. And so on this particular shotgun that I bought, the actual layup was straight layers in the middle and then a grid pattern on the outside so that when they twisted it, the actual pattern that they're revealing is our straight layers in the core, super cool. And then on the outside, we get that very interesting grid pattern, kind of dots. These show up as dots when they're twisted. And so it's a very, very, very cool layup. I like to do a similar pattern where rather than doing dots on the outside, you can do W's, which is where you take flat steel, turn it on its side to make C's so that your flat layers turn into this, and then you stack that up a bunch, and then you've got your W's, and you can put W's on the outside of flat layers in the middle, and you get little pockets of like fiery explosions. But this looks very interesting. To me, it almost looks more organic, kind of a dimpled texture, which I think is very, very cool. And this was a very common layup, it seems, from the Liège, Belgium barrel pattern welders. So hopefully that clears things up. And a quick side note is the way that they would have brought the words and the numbers like 1905 Liège is they would have put that right here or somewhere in the middle, like right there in the twist, so that it would show up like 1905. It would be distorted, but it would show up and repeat itself down the entire length of the bar, which is super duper cool. With that, let's head on back to Glenn's shop, keep on talking about old stuff. And so in here, I can see that there's they're anywhere from, this one's a little bit thinner, that's about 5/16, and then, so we've got left hand, right hand, probably done in 2 or 3, or 2 or 4, if it's alternating.
You got a pair there and another pair.
Yeah. If we're alternating left to right, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I had always assumed, I didn't even think about it until just looking at it now, that they just took one single piece and wrapped it around. And they're wrapping it around this giant mandrel, right?
They used a mandrel, but they also had a thin metal sleeve so that it didn't stick to the mandrel.
What was the sleeve made of?
With just thin sheet metal. That was bored out when they bored it. It went away.
Oh.
It just gave it a small liner as they wrapped that around.
And so how were they heating it up in order to be able to get compression after so they heated it up, wrapped it around the mandrel, and then how would they actually forge weld it together?
Well, I think it was a combination of a butt weld and using the anvil, the barrel anvil as a swedge and hammering it. And I don't know if it's in here or in one of my slides, but it shows the two guys with fairly light hammers welding that together.
Interesting.
And they were working out of a coal fire. They were quite good at their welding skills.
Yeah.
But it would take a while to produce a barrel.
That's amazing that they'd be able to get this up to forge welding temperature and not forge weld it to the mandrel on the inside.
Well, they had the piece in the fire.
Yeah.
Brought it out, slid the mandrel in.
Oh.
The mandrel's cold.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So then you're heating up just this
but
coil, this coiled barrel section.
Interesting. So they keep the barrel separate, and is it being supported by that thin sheet metal on the inside?
Well, I don't think it supports it so much, but if you have a piece of 5/16 by 1 1/4 or so, and you're wrapping it in a coil, it's going to support itself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then they're not making the barrel this long.
Yeah.
It may be in 2 sections that they weld together at a point.
Interesting.
So it's not like you got something 3 or 4 feet long that's going to just sag down.
Yeah. Interesting. And
it sort of self-supports itself.
That makes sense. Yeah. I guess with that wide of a piece, that makes a lot more sense.
And it's coiled.
Yeah. Interesting. And then for the butt welds, you were saying that oftentimes they did a really good job of hiding them either underneath the kind of fore-end wood or maybe in between the 2 barrels. And that's just smart.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You've got a photo in here of a butt weld. That would be a really hard weld to get compression and make work, but it looks like they did a good job of it.
Yeah. In this photograph, you can see the end of the wrap there.
And it's not particularly long.
That would be more of a almost a scarf butt weld.
Yeah. Are they wearing wooden shoes there?
Yes, they are. And in one of the photographs, it's pretty dark to see, but you'll see their leather shoes are up above the bellows. They're using a bellows for their air. We'll go a little into another thing here. The bellows was a double-chambered
So it
unit.
worked on the on both sides.
Right.
So
And so you could get a very smooth, consistent airflow. Much better than a fan.
yeah, really.
Yes, and you could by operating the bellows at the right speed, you would get that consistent airflow, and it wouldn't come and go, which makes it easier for forge welding, and you don't need a lot of air. A fan sometimes, a hand blower is pretty good.
Yeah.
But an electric fan, sometimes you can't quite control it, and you're blowing too much air or not enough. You blow your fire out.
Yeah.
And, it starts to come out the top.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they were using a hand-operated bellows,
Interesting.
brick forges.
Yep, and then they had specialty anvils made that were basically swage anvils.
Yeah, this is a twisting mechanism
Oh,
for
yeah.
twisting it.
Yeah.
And it's above a water trough, and there's a drain here. They used a water can
Yeah.
to cool it to get the consistent twist.
Yeah.
You can see the blacksmith has got the smaller hammer, the striker's got the heavier hammer.
Yeah. It's amazing how consistent of twists they have on here. They're dang near perfect.
Well, if you did twists all day long,
That's,
you'd get
that's-
pretty darn good at it.
That's fair.
The bad barrels
Yeah.
you probably never saw.
Yeah. Yeah.
The ones that didn't quite make it
Yeah.
did not end up in a gun like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awfully cool. So on this particular barrel, they did, it seems like, straight layers in the middle, and then a big kind of dot matrix on either side, and that's where we get the interesting dots on the outside. Really, what it is, it's the bright steel wire with thin pieces of the darker steel separating it out, and it just looks very, very interesting.
Yeah, their consistency is amazing how they did it.
And being able to get that stock from raw material, because the raw material that they're getting from the mill at that point, I'm guessing, is probably not super. Well, I guess if they probably have rolling mills by then, but even so, it had to be just astronomically expensive to be able to produce a barrel like this. And then, were they turning everything on the lathe after forge welding it together?
Well, they did have lathes that they machined them on, but they also had grinding wheels that they ground the outside with. They were like
Interesting.
6 feet in diameter.
This thing is
And a guy would lay it on a board above the grinding wheel and grind it.
wow, because this is exceptionally. I mean, it looks hand done, but it is very, very, very concentric and very nice. There's not a whole lot of dips or dings
Right.
or anything like that.
Well, they could have rough ground it and then cleaned it on a lathe instead of just turning.
I think
lots of material.
It has enough. It has enough like dips that it looks like it's hand ground. And obviously, to be able to get this far into the twist, they had to take a lot of material off of the outside.
Right.
Which is also very interesting.
Yeah.
Oh man. And
Well,
then
it's like any Damascus, You start with a lot to end up with a little.
Yeah. It's very interesting. And then there's only one inconsistency that I can tell on the inside of the barrel. One real one. There's a couple of little ones, but that is amazing that they were able to get such clean welds doing such kind of a crazy welding method.
Right.
Yeah.
But like I say, they did it for years and they got really good at it.
It's awesome. Yeah. And so there's no one really doing this style of welding anymore after the folks that you knew kind of closed shop?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
No. I know a couple people that have done Damascus barrels and they're a solid bar and they bore them and sleeve them. But
not ribbon
and they're
butt welding like that.
No, not that I know of.
Be a good project one of these days.
That'll keep you busy.
Yeah. That one, it's very apparent the 3 bars that were then wrapped, because you can absolutely see the weld line.
Well,
there.
and it was such a big barrel.
Yeah.
I mean, this is almost 2 inches down here.
Really?
Yeah, it was really big.
What was it?
Well, I don't know.
Elephant gun?
It was about 6 feet tall. It was in the museum. It didn't look like they'd ever used it.
Yeah, there's that butt weld right there. How in the world did they get I guess it has to be a scarf joint. It has to be like a long scarf joint would be my guess. But Wow. Yeah, that is awfully, awfully impressive.
This is a photograph of Manfred Sachs's forge welding in a shop in Germany, and there's a book out on his knives and stuff. But he was also in an industrial area where he could go to big hammers and big forges and make some pretty big stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild what they were able to achieve and get good success at just through lots of practice and lots of time.
Practice and time.
Yep.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah,
You
it is.
know.
It is cool what how they figured out how to bring the pattern to the surface too, through twisting and then grinding far enough in, and just the different patterns they were able to create. Very, very, very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about it. We don't have any ribbons to weld up today, but yeah, Glenn, I'm glad that you got to document and kind of keep track of this cool method of pattern welding, and thank you for explaining it to us.
Sure. I hope it was clear, and Will, I sure want to thank you for coming over and visiting again. And the next time you come, we'll do some ribbons.
Awesome. That would
We'll
be
get it set up.
That would be a ton of fun. Thank you, Glenn. I really
you bet.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Will.
Awesome.
You're always welcome.
I appreciate that.
Huge thank you to Glenn Gilmore for giving up a portion of his day to talk about this. He's the first one that really ignited my interest in this style of pattern welding. It is just mind-boggling that these dudes 150 years ago were able to build just precise, beautiful Mosiac Damascus patterns and then do these long barrel welds. It's truly crazy. And I really got my first taste of it at his shop 7 years ago. Super cool, the experiences that he got to have learning about it in the place that it actually happened. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Glenn's awesome. He makes great hydraulic forging presses, and he's an awesome artisan blacksmith as well. So please go check him out. His stuff will be linked in the description down below. But before we end it, huge thanks to Mr. Cool for sponsoring today's episode, as well as to our patrons for patronizing us and keeping this channel going. I appreciate you guys for sticking around, and I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.